Okay, we are recording. Duncan, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, nice to be chatting with you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I've seen your song picks in the email that I received. I'm really looking forward to having a good natter about them today because there's some cracking records to be discussed, and and we always kick off the playlist by asking guests to tell me the song that they regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
Okay, so I've chosen Crosstown Traffic by Jimi Hendrix, partly because it's one of the very few intros that's done with a comb and a piece of paper, I think. And I just remember when I started going out as a young teenager, they used to always play this in my local in Derby, the Blessed in Carriage. I used to just hear that intro, and it was always like, it just always stuck in my mind as such a great intro because it's so sort of quirky and off the wall as well.
Urgent as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It does sound like traffic, and it sounds
Yeah,
like it does make your ears sort of prick up in a way. So it's
absolutely.
yeah. Still, I listened to it the other day just to check. Is that still one that? It's just one that stays in my mind. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's still brilliant. So
And to talk a little about you as a songwriter and Maximo Park's approach to things. So, in the time when the band started to where we're at now, the way that
mhm.
people's listening habits are structured very differently, insofar as it would appear that a majority of this all happens on streaming services now and things like that. And I think what that also can cause is just an overload of music, and so it puts pressure, I guess, maybe more so on more commercial pop acts to grab people right from that opening sort of intro. And
Yeah.
so I wonder if I want to ask you if any of these kind of changes in how people are consuming their music, also other people now finding out about music on TikTok and things like that. Does any of that find its way, if at all, into your creative process?
Well, I remember reading something that I think Taylor Swift she'd stopped doing intros or something. She used to do them, and then yeah, like you say, just this immediate sort of first line of a song or a certain sound that would open it, as opposed to an actual intro part. But I mean, in terms of the way I write, I don't really I'm aware that they may not tick certain algorithms and it may not get on certain playlists, but I think personally it's just the music itself and you know following the instinct of that and kind of staying true to that is kind of more important to me than trying to get it to fit into the current mold, because I mean it'll probably change again. It's constantly shifting, so I think in a way it's more stabilizing in a way, just to kind of um experiment in your own way with or without an intro, for example, or the way you arrange. I mean, there's always this thing with with pop songs where they say, the sooner you get to the chorus, the better, sort of thing.
Yeah,
But even then, it's like, well, that has to be a decision that that I would want to make, and I want to feel excited to get to a certain part in the song where I'm like, okay, this is a moment that I want to sort of build to in an interesting way. So yeah, I would say it hasn't affected it too much.
yeah. Okay, okay. I mean I presume you were sort of referencing that "don't bore us, get to the chorus" kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And that aside, like with this sort of the debut record, was there considerations then for getting it on radio? Was there, were any of the songs ever edited down a little bit to make them, more radio friendly and to get them on?
Yeah, well, actually, they weren't. It's funny, actually, when we met up with a few record labels in the beginning, there were a few labels that wanted us to change the arrangements so that they were more commercial. Like Apply Some Pressure was one. I think The Coast was Always Changing is another from the first album. And when we spoke to Warp Records, they were like, "We don't want to change it. We want to put it out how you want to." And I think for us that was so important. It was having that creative freedom. There was a bit less money in it, but I think we were really very much, why would you, if you like us, why would you want to just completely change, our mentality and what we're trying to do? So from the start we had that sort of control over that. I mean, here and there were definitely the odd edits where, perhaps the second verse might have been shortened, but we were very much on top of that. We wouldn't let anybody edit without our sort of, we would say yes to this or no to that. I mean, even the most recent song, Quiz Show Clue, there was about 4 edits, and we just said, nope, we're going to just leave it as it is. So
Yeah.
whether they play it or not it's up to them. But yeah, it's in its original form as a single. So yeah, we were lucky in that way that we could choose, and if something did feel a little long as well to us, then we would be okay with it. But yeah, we sort of were able to do things on our terms in that way.
Fantastic. For track 2, I'm going to ask you to tell me the first song you remember hearing had an emotional impact on you, please.
So the first song was probably Manic Monday by the Bangles. And it's a bit of a funny story because when I was a little kid, I used to kind of hum little melodies in my head to sort of help me fall asleep and stuff, and make up little melodies. And I remember, I must have been sent to bed earlier because I remember the sun still coming through the curtains, and I had this melody that was just going round and round, and it stayed for a few nights in my head, and then I sort of forgot about it. And it must have been a year or so later, I heard that song, and it wasn't exactly the same, but it had these melodic elements in it that were, I just suddenly thought, oh, they've got my melody. Or in my head, because I was, just a kid, I thought that melodies were just floating around, and
Prince
they were,
just grabbed it. And,
yeah, that's it. Yeah, somebody else got that one, and well, yeah. So at first I thought it was, and later on I found out Prince wrote it, and that was like, oh wow, that's such a cool thing. But yeah, so I loved the Bangles as well. Just I guess that sort of jangly pop of
yeah,
it's just brilliant. So yeah, that song sort of had this. I just had such a connection to it because I felt like I recognized it from somewhere else. Quite strange, but yeah, that's why I chose that.
it's a perfect pop record, isn't it?
Yeah, it's such a. I mean, the melody's brilliant, and yeah, it's such an unusual thing to make into a pop song. Talking about a manic Monday, and like wishing it was the weekend. So it was, yeah, it's just clever. Again, it's sort of the sort of wisdom of Prince, that comes through. It's just such an amazing writer. Yeah.
And that band, the Bangles, I think that's first 2 records, the albums were really solid, and it feels that they're kind of a little forgotten in the UK. Like I think when people talk about guitar bands, and certainly sort of females in guitar bands, the Bangles kind of get a little overlooked, which I think is criminal.
Yeah, no, you're right. They do. I think it's often, yeah, it's just wrong that they are, and I think they, but I think the problem sometimes is when people are in a sort of, they're regarded in a pop sense, so it's kind of a little throwaway in some ways. And obviously, it's an all-female band, so certainly at the time there was this kind of snootiness, or I don't know, maybe people didn't regard them, whoever wrote about them, in the same way. But if they affect you in the way they affected me, then I'm like, I loved it. I mean, I've got them on record. I've got both those albums on record, so definitely a fan. Yeah, and brilliant players, great musicians. I think as well, Susanna Hoffs is still writing with people and making records and stuff. And I don't know so much about the other band members, but I remember sort of at one point doing a little deep dive into what their influences were, and trying to find interviews and things. But yeah, so great band. Yeah,
I think they've got back together quite a lot recently and toured as the Bangles. I think I don't know if they've got to the UK, but
right.
But Susanna Hoffs, like her voice is ridiculous. It's so beautiful, and she I don't know if you ever heard it, but she released a version of a track called All I Want, which is off Ian Brody wrote it on the first Lightning Seeds album, and
wow, okay.
and it was a follow up single to Pure, and Susanna Hoffs done a version of it, and he's absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing! I have to listen to that.
Yeah, give it a listen.
I will do. Yeah, definitely.
Right, I'm going to move on and ask you, please, to tell me about the song that soundtracked your time at school, please.
So I've chosen Half the Time by Lemonheads. I remember actually leaving school. A lot of my friends went to sixth form, but I went to art college, and the bus journey from where I lived to art college, I used to listen to Lovey by the Lemonheads, that album, all the time. And there was half the time and another song called um, Ride With Me, which is, or it might just be called Ride. I think it's Ride With Me. And there's a line about the pencil smell reminds me of school, the clock on the wall. It's got all these lines that you could relate to being in class. But because I'd sort of broken free of that last year of school and was starting art college, really, the half the time, and there's such a lovely melancholy about that record, and mixed in with sort of punk and the sort of older sound of the Lemonheads merged with the newer sort of poppier songs that even Dando was writing. So, but half the time has this real kind of sadness to it. But I just loved kind of wallowing in that
Yeah,
on the bus.
yeah. What a record Lovey is, and
Yeah,
and taking nothing away from the two that followed that. I think Shame About Razor, just pretty much it. It's my perfect summer record. There's just
yeah,
something about that. It hit me at the right time. I think I was probably about 18 when that album came out, and it was like just
yeah,
absolutely chocker with really good little pop gems. And oh yeah, what a dude Evan Dando was.
yeah.
I want to ask you about school. Was it something that you enjoyed?
I wasn't a big fan of school. I mean, I wasn't massively academic. I was definitely more of I loved art. I was definitely into art and painting, and but I did struggle a bit academically, partly because I was daydreaming a lot. And I think when I knuckled down at things, I could do things, but I was always drawing in my notebook. I wasn't really listening. So I think I was always consumed by my own imagination. Really, I think that was. But yeah, it wasn't the easiest of schools either. It was. I went to state school in Derby, and it was. You had to have your wits about you a bit. It could be tough sometimes. So I was quite glad I got out of there, and when I started art school, because it was in the city. I'd left the area where I was living and would go to the centre of Derby every day where the art college was, and that would just became this just a great time for me. It was like being free, really. So I associate it. A lot of the music of that time when I was coming of age was is almost like your senses are more heightened, and it really influences you
Absolutely.
from then on, doesn't it? It kind of, you often think back to that as almost like these hazy golden sort of days.
Absolutely. You, I mean, you spoke about daydreaming and doodling
Mm.
in your notebooks and stuff. Was music a consideration at school, or was art where you saw your future at that point?
Art more so, because our music department was it was barely a music department. It's sort of, they had two guitars. I think one had two strings on, and the other had three
That
strings.
sounds like mine.
Yeah, we had a Casio keyboard, or two Casio keyboards. One would not work, and one had the batteries. So everyone was like trying to snatch that and get the drum machine going. Um, but I do remember, funny enough, we had a support teacher who came in one day, and he taught like just a small group of us how to play a whole lot of love, because it's a very easy riff on the guitar. Um, so it's just and we all just were like, "Whoa, is that how you play?" That sounds amazing. So I remember one of my very early sort of riffs was just for that one day. I realized, oh, this is a cool thing. But I mean, my dad was he used to play music a bit in the '60s in Salford, and he had a lot of Bob Dylan and Beatles records. So I did love music from early on, because I used to hear it a lot when I was a kid. He would play those records, and sort of like jazz records and things like that. So it was always kind of there as something that I would like really enjoy and get lost in. But yeah, I think at school particularly, art was more of an escape for me.
You talk about there being great records on at home and things like that, and your dad being very musical. Was there a guitar knocking about?
There was, but it's kind of hilarious. It was like this thing called a Tatra Jumbo. So it was this huge, I could, it was like twice the size of me, and the strings were very far off the fretboard, but I didn't know any different. So when I started to learn, I borrowed this thing, and my hands became pretty tough quite quickly because you had to learn, chords, and you're pressing down these chord shapes, and the strings were so far from the fretboard that it kind of toughened my hands up. So when I did get an electric, I couldn't believe how kind of smooth and easy it felt. So yeah, it was good. He did have this cheap guitar, but it kind of taught me how to sort of play, perhaps in a harder way than it could have been. So, yeah. So that was good. Yeah, he didn't. He later on, actually, when the band started, I bought a couple of guitars, and I had this Gibson that he loved. He thought it was, he was just like, oh, that's the best guitar I've ever played. And so he started becoming a bit more interested before the end of his life. He kind of started playing a bit again. So he bought himself a keyboard, and he had like a Gibson, like a jazz kind of Gibson. He saved it and got one of those. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, you've spoken about your dad's records there. Let's find out about your records. So, can you tell me the first record you remember buying from a record shop, please?
So the first one, me and my sister clubbed together, and it was They Might Be Giants, Birdhouse in Your Soul.
I mean, great, right?
Yeah, what a record. Yeah. So we saw them. I remember them being on Top of the Pops, and they were just so unusual compared to everything else, and so quirky and lyrically just, what is this about? It's so crazy, and I think both of us were like, we've got to get this. So we just put our pocket money together and went to the corner shop, and they used to have a little 7-inch section in there next to the 10p mix,
Yeah.
We spent our money on that. Yeah, so I still got it actually to this day somewhere. It's I think the second was Belinda Carlisle's Heaven Is a Place on Earth. So you could
great pop record though.
Quite a mix. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, if you're talking, you're the first person that's chosen a They Might Be Giants track Right. I've done 560 of these shows now, and I'm a big fan of They Might Be Giants. I've had both Johns on actually over time, and they're about to come to the UK in the next few weeks actually and play, and they've got an incredible catalogue of music. But I think that, again, like you, it was that like Birdhouse in Your Soul that presented them to me for the first time, and absolutely perfect little pop gem of a record. That
they're just so clever in the way this sort of I mean that itself is just to be able to do something so sort of quirky and unusual, but really sort of captivating at the same time. It's a real skill, and you can hear it throughout their records. It's just that it just sounds like they're just having fun a lot of the time doing.
Definitely. Just talking about record shops. I mean, you said that you and your sister clubbed together in the corner shop and bought it off of a little rack there. As you got older, and to take that up to present day, like how important was the record shop? Did you have some good little indies around where you was growing up, and where you at as a band now when it comes to independent record shops?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was really important when I was sort of coming of age, and particularly around the time of kind of the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of the certainly when sort of bands like Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins and even like UK bands like I suppose My Bloody Valentine, and there was so many. It was such a brilliant time, and it was just exciting to go into a record shop, not only hear records I'd never heard, but look at the recommendations and the T-shirts, and people used to just smoke in the shops at the time, so it'd be kind of smoky and it'd have a smell to it, and it would it was just like it was like this magical place. And yeah, in Derby we had a place called Way Ahead Records, which then became Reveal Records, and in a sort of quite an amazing turn of events, the Tom Rose, who used to run the record shop when I was younger, he formed his own record label, Reveal Records, after the shop. He looks after Jonas Policewoman and various.
Wow.
And he got in touch with me a few years ago to say, I've been hearing your solo stuff on Bandcamp, and do you want to sort of join together, and I'll sort of put some of your records out for you. And I was like, I couldn't quite believe that the same guy I used to really look up to was like, oh, he's the dude, you know, he's
Yeah.
like, he owns a shop, and you would get people asking. And funny enough, I had a Lovey Lemonheads t-shirt, and I bought it from the shop. And I said to him, "Oh, I used to have this t-shirt that my mum took to a charity shop when I left home. And I'm like, it's probably worth like a fortune now." And I'm like, what have you
Yeah.
done with my t-shirt?" And he said, "Oh, I remember ordering that. I ordered that from the States, from Boston." And he said, "We just got a small handful." I was like, "Oh, no way." So it was like all these being able to chat to him about those times
Oh, how
has been
wonderful.
great, you know. So we sort of, yeah, it's a nice sort of circle. But I mean, as the band Maximo Park, we really we've grown up valuing independent record shops, that whenever we release anything, I mean, we're currently in the middle of an outdoor tour where we're getting together with across the UK with like Crash Records in Leeds or Banquet Records in London, Asai in Glasgow, Reflex and RPM in Newcastle, and all over, you know, the UK, as many as we can, really, to support the shop. And anyone who's interested in records, we say, well, buy it through this shop, you know, buy it through the
Yeah.
independent. So yeah, it's still a huge part of our sort of outlook and how we see, you know, because it's so important also for musicians and music lovers to have, in an industry that's quite cutthroat and a difficult one to navigate, it's a really kind of important thing to have, and have that relationship with the shops and the fans as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you've just spoken about coming of age at a time around Valentine's and Nirvana and Pumpkins and such. I'm going to ask you now to tell me the song that soundtracked your years out clubbing.
Well, it would be "Babies" by Pulp, uh, probably because I think all of my pals from my hometown, whenever we used to go out, we went to a club called the Blue Note in Derby. And this song, I don't know, there's something about Pulp, maybe as well, they were from Sheffield, they weren't far away from Derby. So there was something about maybe the accent and just the Jarvis Cocker's way of sort of singing about how things were. You know, it was
Mm,
really relatable. And just, you know, the characters in their songs just were, you could relate to them. So you just thought, oh, you know, it's like they're talking about everybody's lives where
yeah.
we live, you know. So and there's this sort of kind of sense of humor to it that I think we all just loved. So we would often dance to that when that track came on. And I mean, Derby was quite a small city, so you'd be able to go to an indie club and do that, and then there's a place called the Rock House and go to a heavier night, and then you could go to like an R&B night or a sort of a techno night. There's a place called Progress, where a lot of people used to come up from London or come across from Manchester, and you know, would listen to house or techno. So it was a great little place, kind of a bit of a melting pot of places you could go. But for some reason, this song in particular just reminds me of when we first started really sort of going out and
Yeah.
having fun.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. There's the bit at the end of Babies, like I think it's just after as the last chorus of it drops. There's another little play over that they just drop in, and it is just this lovely little. I presume I think it's the guitar. I don't think it's Candida, but it is. Oh, it just gets better and better and better, Babies, as it unfolds. That track, it's beautiful,
Yeah. Oh, it
absolutely
does. It
beautiful,
does.
and it is that kind of sort of. It's pure kitchen sink. It's Mike Lee, isn't it? It's like everything
Yeah.
about Pulp. He's just got that, yeah, sort of bleak, but you know, there's humour in it, as you say. It's absolutely fantastic. Great show, great show.
Yeah.
I mean, whilst talking about Derby so much, let's move on to track 6, and that's a favourite song from an artist from your hometown.
Well, I'd have to say a song called "Your Woman" by Whitetown, um, written by Jyoti Mishra, and it was really huge for anyone who lived in Derby when that went to number one. And the video is sort of a black and white video, as I remember. And I think there's the fountain and parts of town, and Derby sort of rarely gets sort of spoken about. So for us, it was like this sort of brilliant song, just so catchy. And obviously, it's been recently sampled and used in. I can't remember. It's like a US artist recently. The
Yeah,
sort of and it sounded a bit like Star Wars, the Star
Yeah.
Wars theme. And every now and then you'd see Joy T walking around town, and you go, "Oh, there's Joy," you know. So it was kind of yeah, it was a big deal for us in terms of just having somebody who you could bump into, just walking around. And I love the song.
It's incredible.
Again, yeah, great quirky pop song. Again, quite unusual in the way that say maybe They Might Be Giants. It has to come from a certain mind that it's not it's not somebody just trying to write pop songs. It's somebody who's actually really having fun and being creative with what they do.
Yeah. So I was, when you sent this over again, no one's chose that track yet, and I don't know why, because I think it's absolutely fantastic. But I've got a story about Joy T.
Oh, have you?
And so basically, way back in the probably about maybe 95, 90, when was Your Woman? 96, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's weird that we was talking about clubs, because as you was listing the venues, I was trying to remember, because somebody that one of my best mates was in a band, and we used to knock about with a band called David Devant and his Spirit Wife.
Right,
And,
yeah.
And Joy T launched a club night in Derby.
Right, wow.
And which he was DJing at as well. And so we was like, David Devant got to play, so we was like, let's see if we can get our band on there as well. And so we come up with David Devant to join his, I think it was the opening night of join his new club night. And his taste is fantastic. I remember walking, he was playing Talking Heads, he was playing so many great records.
Yeah.
And I can't think what the venue was. It was quite small, and it had a stage at the back. That doesn't help, I know. But
it might have been the Warehouse. Was it the Warehouse? Maybe,
possibly. Probably looked for maybe 200 capacity, maybe a little more.
Probably probably the Warehouse. I mean, there's a few other options, but that was very much like where you would see visiting DJs, but like particularly with like indie music potentially. And that would be my first guess. That I'm sure there's other people from Derby go, oh no, it's probably here, but I would say,
fantastic. Yeah, we was fanboying out. We was like, that's Joy. He wrote Your Woman.
Yeah, a bit of a legend.
Absolutely. Well, look, it's the last track. Duncan, I'm going to ask you, please, to tell the listeners of the podcast a song that you think they may not know that you would like them to hear.
Yeah, sure. So I've chosen The Turning Ground by the Tara Clerkin Trio. I heard this sort of by accident. It was through there's a Glaswegian record shop, Monorail Records, that our band always try and visit whenever we're in Glasgow. And I think they just sort of sent some kind of mailer out, like an email. And I was just sat on a train, it came through, and one of the songs they were recommending was by her, and I just loved it. It's so unusual, but so it's sort of almost like a loop, like an arpeggiated guitar loop in a way, but the way it sort of sounds and the way her voice comes in, and also the sort of something to do with the sort of the rhythm within that sort of sound is just really kind of intriguing and engaging. So I then proceeded to get the record after that. But I just love that. That was the first track I heard, and it's super kind of modern sounding as well. So it's very fresh. I think it's maybe out last year. I think it came out. So it's possibly the year before. So I'd highly recommend that if you just want something a little different, but also, yes, super inventive and intriguing. Like really cool track to get into, I think.
Wonderful. Well, Duncan, we make it easy for the listeners of the podcast to go and check that out, because we put together a little Spotify playlist with that on it and all the other tracks that we've spoken about today. And obviously, Maximo Park will be added to that playlist as well. So let's talk Maximo Park. We've been talking about so many other great records. What's happening with great records coming from Maximo Park?
So we just released our new record, Stream of Life. So like I said, we're doing a few out stores at the moment, and then a full UK tour, and then onto Europe as well. But yeah, it's a record that we put together quite quickly. It was, in some ways, we had this sort of deadline, so we had to get our heads together and create these sort of I think it's 11 songs if I'm right, or
Mhm.
maybe 10. I often forget the number, but yeah, we were very lucky. We got to go out to Atlanta, Georgia, and recorded it with Ben Allen, the producer, who's he's done all sorts from hip hop records through to bands like Deer Hunter and I think Soccer Mummy was the record he did before us. But we
Athens,
also
Georgia's REM, right?
That's it, yeah. So we
Yeah.
visited, yeah, we went to the little college town of Athens, and
Did you see the
you know,
40 Watt Club?
yes, we went there, yeah. We
Wow.
yes, we had a little tour. We were absolute music geeks and did the tour, and
Oh, love it.
yeah. We even got some photos of us posing in the same alley as REM. You know,
Oh,
with I was Peter Buck, Paul was Michael Stipe, and
oh, love it.
Tom was Bill Berry. Yeah, so yeah, we had a lot of fun. We had a good day actually, and it's amazing. Really, Athens is something like six blocks long and 3 blocks wide. It's tiny, really. It's a tiny place for all that great music to come from, and so yeah, I mean, Pylon being another band from there. That
Oh,
yeah, brilliant band. But their singer Vanessa Briscoe Hay. Amazingly, Ben, our producer, he had her number because he'd done some stuff recently, and he's from Athens himself. And he said that's should we try and see if we can get her to sing on the record? And gave her a call, and she was like, "Send me the song." And we sent the song. Paul gave her a bit of context about the lyrics, and she was into it. And so she's on the song "Dormant Till Explosion." So
that's
we
incredible.
yeah, it's amazing. We got to do a song with with Vanessa. So that was yeah, and obviously we were all like trying to find pylon t-shirts when we got to Athens. So yeah, no, that was a real high for us actually. That because I think with each record we've tried to work with various women that we really admire, and we worked with Mimi Parker from Low on Risk to Exist, and then Pauline Murray from Our Own Backyard in Newcastle, who we rent a studio off as well with Pauline. She's obviously a punk legend, and this album we work with Vanessa. So it's quite an amazing trio of women that we've been lucky enough to work with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if people want to find out about where you're playing and anything else that's happening with the band, where's the best place to do that?
So it's all pretty much on the website. We've got maximopark.com, and there's the usual social media places, Instagram and things like that. There's some embarrassing videos of us talking, doing memes or whatever. But the music itself, which is the main thing, that can be found on the website with tour dates and things like that. So
Fantastic, Duncan. It's been so lovely chatting to you today. And
likewise, yeah.
when I saw your song list, I knew it was going to be a good chat. This one, and
Oh,
absolutely was lovely.
yeah.
I will let you get back to your day. Thank you so much for giving up your time and coming on, mate.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thank you, mate. Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.